In our previous lecture, we started our discussion on high vacuum measurement. So, let us continue with our discussion on high vacuum measurements or instruments that are available for measurement of very low pressure or high vacuum. Okay, we will be talking about these 5 different gauges that are available for measurement of high vacuum: MacLeod gauge, ionization gauge, thermocouple gauge, Pirani gauge and Knudsen gauge. Thermocouple gauge and Pirani gauge, they can be called thermal conductivity gauge. They use the same principle and they are clubbed together as thermal conductivity gauge. We have talked about MacLeod gauge in your last lecture. If you remember, this is a capillary connected to a bulb and there is another reference capillary and this is connected to the vacuum source. So, this is connected to the source whose pressure I am going to measure. This is sealed. The other end is connected to a reservoir which contains mercury and this is movable. So, the measurement starts as follows. First, we lower the reservoir sufficiently so that this entire part is filled with the gas, and then we raise the reservoir. As we raise the reservoir, mercury layer goes up and then when it crosses this point, this part gets disconnected from this part. We continue to raise the reservoir until the mercury level in the reference capillary meets the 0 on the scale, and then this length, from the knowledge of this length we can measure the pressure from the knowledge of the dimensions of this MacLeod gauge. So, let us take a simple example and elaborate on this. A MacLeod gauge has Vv equal to 100 centimeter cube, meaning the volume of the bulb, the volume of the capillary and the volume of the tube down to this point is 100 centimeter cube, and the capillary has a diameter of 1 millimeter. We need to calculate the pressure indicated by the reading of 4 centimeter. So, this reading, this is the 0 on the reference scale. So, when this shows 4 centimeter, we want to know how much pressure is indicated by the gauge. In our last class, we derived these equations: P equal to Ay square by Vv, where A is the cross sectional area of the capillary, Y is this length. We have seen in our last class that the pressure can be computed from this equation P equal to Ay square by Vv, or P equal to Ay square by Vv minus Ay, which is same as Y into Vc by Vb minus Ay. So, MacLeod gauge has volume equal to volume Vb equal to 100 centimeter square, 100 centimeter cube. So, this entire volume is 100 centimeter cube and the reading is 4 centimeter. So, this is 4 centimeter. So, let us see how much pressure is indicated, and this can be computed by these two equations. So, pressure can be computed using equations or which is same as since so this is an approximation of this equation. Since A y is small, we can neglect A y in comparison to V v. V c is the volume of the capillary. So, let us calculate first V c, 1 millimeter diameter, we have 4 centimeter reading. So, 40 millimeter. So, this becomes 10 by millimeter cube. So, Vc, which is volume of the capillary occupied by the gas, is 10 pi millimeter cube. Vb is given as 100 centimeter cube, which is same as 10 to the power 5 millimeter cube. So, from this equation, which is the exact equation we derived last time, we can find out P as 10 pi. So, if we take pi equal to 3.14, it will be 31.4. So, 31.4 So, y V c V b A y, because V c is same as A y. If you calculate this, it will come as 0.0126 torr. If you use this equation, you will also get a value very close to this. In fact, error in using equation P equal to ay square by Vv will be which is because ay equal to Vc which is 3.14 into 10 to the power minus 4. So, the error we invite due to approximation is extremely small. So, now let us look at some of the advantages and limitations of McLeod gauges. A major advantage of McLeod gauges, it is independent of the gas composition, can be used as standard to calibrate other low pressure gauges in the range over which McLeod gauge can be used, and there is no need to apply any corrections to the McLeod gauge readings. So, it is independent of gas composition. The McLeod gauge can be used as a standard to calibrate other low pressure measuring gauges, and there is no need to apply any corrections to the McLeod gauge readings. However, there are some precautions to be taken. Since the working of the McLeod gauge is based on the compression of the gas and the gas must obey Boyle's law. Presence of condensable vapor causes pressure readings to be low, so moisture taps should be provided. So, there should not be any condensable vapor present, because condensable vapor occupy much more volume when they are gas, but the volume becomes extremely small when they become liquid. So, the presence of condensable vapor may cause great uncertainty in the reading. To avoid this, we must provide moisture taps. The measuring tube or the sealed capillary tube should have small diameter, but we have to be careful that there should not be any capillary effect, because if the diameter is too small, there can be capillary effect, and the capillary effect can produce significant uncertainty. Finally, the McLeod gauge cannot give continuous readings, because the measurement involves lot of steps to be followed, like the reservoir has to be lowered, subsequently it has to be raised. So, it cannot give continuous readings. Thus, steady state condition must prevail for useful measurement. So, you must remember these limitations of McLeod gauge or precautions that we must take while using McLeod gauge. The gas whose pressure we are going to measure must obey Boyle's law. The presence of condensable vapor can cause uncertainty in the measurement, so moisture taps should be provided. The capillary effect should not be there. So, the diameter of the measuring tube or the capillary should not be so small that capillary effect can produce uncertainty in the reading. Since McLeod gauge cannot give continuous reading, steady state condition must prevail during measurement for useful measurement. Next, let us talk about ionization gauge, another important high vacuum measuring instrument. An electron passing through a potential difference will acquire a kinetic energy that is proportional to the potential difference. Now, if an electron strikes a gas molecule and this kinetic energy that it has acquired is large enough, the electron may knock out a secondary electron from the gas molecule, leaving it positively charged. Let us say we have these electrons, the red ones, and these ones are the gas molecules. Now, the electron are flowing through a potential difference. We have a cathode here, we have an anode here. If the kinetic energy of this electron is large and it strikes a gas molecule, then there is a strong possibility that this electron will knock out a secondary electron from this gas molecule and this gas molecule will be converted to a positively charged ion. Number of positive ions formed is dependent on number of collisions. More the number of collisions, higher is the possibility of forming these positively charged ions. So, number of positive ions formed is dependent on number of gas molecules, and number of gas molecules per unit volume is nothing but a measure of pressure. So, if I send a stream of electrons in an enclosure and the enclosure is connected to the pressure source or to the vacuum whose pressure I am interested in measuring, then these emitted electrons will strike these gas molecules and positively charged ions will be formed. Number of positively charged ions formed will be depending on the number of gas molecules present in the enclosure, which is a measure of pressure. So, if I can measure the current produced by these positively charged ions, in other words, if I measure this ion current can be taken as a measure of pressure. This is the principle on which ionization gauge works. So, let us now elaborate on this. Ionization gauge measure vacuum by measuring the current produced by ionized gas molecules. We can call this as ion current. The gas molecules are ionized as a stream of electrons collide with them. An electron passing through a potential difference will acquire a kinetic energy that is proportional to the potential difference. If this energy is large and the electron collides with a gas molecule, the electron may knock out a secondary electron from the gas molecule. Thus, the gas molecule will be a positively charged ions. Number of positive ions, in other words ion current, depends on electron current, that is number of electrons emitted by the cathode, and the number of gas molecules. Because the number of electrons and the number of gas molecules will decide the number of collisions that can take place. So, for a given gas and a constant electron current, number of positive ions or ion current becomes a direct measure of number of gas molecules per unit volume, which is nothing but pressure. So, let us draw the circuit diagram of ionization gauge, a schematic of ionization gauge. We have an enclosure, let us say this is cathode, we have anode here or electron collector. So, it is anode, So, the cathode emits electrons, they are collected by the anode or the electron collector. The cathode is heated up. So, electron is emitted from this hot cathode and it is collected by the electron collector. This enclosure is connected to the vacuum source. So, there are gas molecules whose pressures I am going to measure. When the emitted electron strikes the gas molecule, positively charged ions will be formed. So, I use an ion collector. Typical value may be like this. So, emitted electrons from the cathode strikes the gas molecules that are present in the enclosure when it is connected to the vacuum source. Positively charged ions are formed and they are collected by this ion collector. So, it is a positively charged grid. So, the ion current indicated by this meter will be a direct measure of the pressure, because number of positively charged ions formed for a set electron current and given gas, the ion current is a direct measure of the pressure. This is known as hot cathode ionization gauge. There are three types of ionization gauges: hot cathode ionization gauge, cold cathode ionization gauge, and alpha tone vacuum gauge. We have three different types of ionization gauges. What we just discussed is hot cathode ionization gauge. So, it consists of a heated filament or cathode which emits electrons, a grid with negative potential which is ion collector, and an anode which is electron collector. Now, there are some difficulties associated with this hot cathode ionization gauge. Since we are using a hot filament to emit electrons, certain disadvantages arise. Number 1, cathode may get oxidized. Number 2, high temperature may initiate undesirable chemical reaction. So, to avoid this, to avoid these problems, a cold cathode ionization gauge has been proposed. In case of cold cathode ionization gauge, no heated filament is used to produce electrons. Instead, a high electric field between cathode and anode is used to draw out electrons. Then a high magnetic field of about 1500 Gauss is imposed, which causes the electrons to move towards the anode in a spiral way. So, in case of cold cathode ionization gauge, no heated filament is used to produce electrons. We use a high electric field of about 4000 volt or 4 kilovolt between cathode and anode to draw out electrons. And then a high magnetic field of about 1500 Gauss is imposed, which will cause the electrons to travel towards the anode in a spiral path. So, the path of the electron will be extended, and that will increase the possibility or probability of collisions between electrons and gas molecules, and thus positively charged ions will be formed. The cold cathode ionization gauge is, however, more expensive. The hot cathode ionization gauge can be used to measure vacuum as low as 10 to the power minus 10 torr. Cold cathode ionization gauge can be used up to 10 to the power minus 5 torr. A third variant, alpha tone vacuum gauge, uses an alpha emitter, say a radium source, to ionize the gas molecules. Okay. Let us now look at the schematic of the cold cathode ionization gauge and alpha tone vacuum gauge. Before that, let us talk a line about the sensitivity of the ionization gauge. The sensitivity of the ionization gauge is typically represented by ion current in the numerator and pressure times electron current in the denominator. This is unusual definition, because our usual definition is sensitivity is output by input. Output is the ion current and input is, of course, the pressure. But instead of using this, we use this. We multiply the denominator by the electron current. This definition makes the sensitivity independent of electron current, and thus the sensitivity depends only on the gauge construction. We must remember the sensitivity varies from gas to gas. Now, let us look at schematic of cold cathode ionization gauge. We have cathode, we have a pair of cathode and a hollow anode. This is the enclosure. Connected to vacuum source. So, high electric field of order of 4 kilovolt is applied to draw out electrons, and a strong magnetic field of about 1500 Gauss is imposed around the tube, which will cause the electrons to move in a spiral path to the anode. So, this increases the electron path length, and thus the possibility of the collisions and formation of the positively charged ions increases. The reading from the microammeter will indicate the pressure. The cold cathode measures a pressure between 10 to the power minus 10 to 10 to the power minus 2 torr. So, this is the normal range of cold cathode ionization gauge. However, we have nonlinear relation between meter reading and the pressure. The third variant, which is an alphatron, uses suitable alpha emitter. So, let us say we have radium source here as alpha emitter. The alpha particles will ionize the gas. So, we have ion collector, gauge enclosure, connected to vacuum. The degree of ionization is a measure of the pressure as usual, and the degree of ionization is indicated by the voltage output. The alphatron has a linear range between 10 to the power minus 3 to 10 to the power 3 torr. Here the gauge is linear. However, calibration is gas dependent. Okay. Let us now talk about thermal conductivity gauge. Thermocouple gauge and Pirani gauge come under thermal conductivity gauge. Both thermocouple gauge and Pirani gauge has the same working principle. The thermal conductivity of a gas is independent of pressure at normal pressure, but at very low pressure the thermal conductivity of a gas does depend on pressure. In fact, at very low pressure the thermal conductivity of a gas decreases with pressure. We know heat loss from a heated conducting wire or a hot thin metal surface is dependent on thermal conductivity of the surrounding gas. Let us say we have a glass enclosure is connected to the pressure source and we have a heated filament here, or you can also consider it to be a thin metal surface. Now, this glass surface will work as a cold surface and this is hot surface. So, there will be heat transfer between these two surfaces and finally, the filament will assume some equilibrium temperature. Now, the heat loss from this conducting wire is dependent on thermal conductivity of the surrounding gas, and the thermal conductivity is a function of pressure when you are talking about very low pressure. Thus, the equilibrium temperature of this heated filament becomes the function of this pressure. Let me repeat again. The thermal conductivity of a gas is usually independent of pressure at normal pressure, but at low pressures the thermal conductivity of a gas depends on pressure, it decreases with pressure. Heat loss from a heated conducting wire is dependent on thermal conductivity of the surrounding gas. Thus, the equilibrium temperature of a heated conducting wire becomes a function of pressure. So, if we have a heated filament in a say glass tube and this is connected, the tube is connected to the gas whose pressure I am going to measure, there will be heat transfer between this heated filament and this cold glass surface. Heat loss from this hot surface will depend on the thermal conductivity of the surrounding gas. So, the temperature of this filament depends on the thermal conductivity of the surrounding gas and the thermal conductivity of the surrounding gas depends on this pressure. So, the temperature becomes a function, temperature of the filament becomes a function of this pressure. So, if I can measure the temperature of this heated filament, I can relate that temperature to this pressure. Or if I am talking about a resistance wire, there will be change in resistance due to change in temperature, and if I measure the change in resistance, that also can be related to the pressure. So, this is the principle on which thermal conductivity gauges, namely thermocouple gauge and Pirani gauge, will work. We can measure pressures from 10 to the power minus 4 torr to 1 torr using thermal conductivity gauges. The calibration depends on the gas being used. This is a schematic of thermocouple gauge. For a given gas and heating current, the temperature assumed by the hot surface depends on pressure. So, this is what we just discussed. So, let us now first look at the construction of the thermocouple gauge. We have a glass tube which works as an enclosure. The pressure, this is connected to the pressure source. So, this is the vacuum source. Inside the glass tube, we have a thin metal strip which is heated by sending current through it. So, we can adjust the heating current to heat this metal strip at various temperatures, and the temperature of this metal strip is measured by a thermocouple. We will talk about thermocouple later when we will talk about temperature measuring instrument. For the time being, it will be sufficient to know that a thermocouple is a temperature measuring instrument which gives us millivolt as output. We use high impedance microvoltmeter to measure the millivolt that the thermocouple gives us as output. So, this millivolt is a measure of this temperature of the metal strip. Now, for a given gas and a given heating current, the temperature assumed by this metal strip will depend on the thermal conductivity of the surrounding gas, because that dictates the heat loss from this metal strip to this cold surface. But this thermal conductivity depends on this gas. So, the temperature of this hot metal strip will be dependent on this pressure. So, by measuring the temperature of this metal strip using a thermocouple, I can relate the temperature or the output of the thermocouple, which is millivolt, to this pressure. We can measure a pressure of 10 to the power minus 4 to 1 torr by thermocouple gauges. Let us remember that the measurement can be affected by ambient temperature. Also, we use a metal strip of low emissivity to reduce the effect of radiation. Let us now talk about Pirani gauge. Pirani gauge uses the same principle as thermocouple gauge. However, here the function of heating and measuring temperature are combined in a single element. It is generally more accurate and expensive than thermocouple gauge. The range is same 10 to the power minus 4 to 1 torr. The gauge has to be calibrated for individual gas because it depends, because the thermal conductivity of different gases are different. So, the gauge has to be calibrated for different for individual gas. Temperature compensation is provided in a Pirani gauge. So, Pirani gauge also uses the same principle as thermocouple gauge, but unlike thermocouple gauges, they do not measure the wire temperature directly. Instead, Pirani gauges use the fact that the resistance of a conducting wire changes with the wire's temperature. So, the heated wire, which is let us say my measuring element or Pirani gauge, is connected to one leg of the Wheatstone bridge. An exactly identical element with the Pirani gauge is connected as another leg which is exposed to ambient temperature and works as a temperature compensator for effect of ambient temperature. If the circuit is initially balanced, then the application of pressure to the measuring element will cause unbalance in the current in the circuit, because when you apply pressure to the measuring element which was heated, the heat loss or the temperature of that resistance wire will depend on the gas pressure. The same way, that is exactly what we have seen in case of thermocouple gauge. So, when you apply the gas to the measuring element, the temperature that the resistance wire will assume will depend on the gas pressure. So, change in temperature will cause a change in resistance, and the change in resistance will cause unbalance in the circuit. This unbalanced current can be taken as a measure of gas pressure. So, this is a schematic of Pirani gauge. We have a Wheatstone bridge. This is a measuring element which is nothing but a resistance wire, usually platinum or tungsten wire. Oftentimes we use 4 coiled platinum or tungsten wires. The resistance wire is kept inside an enclosure usually made of hard glass, and this is connected to the pressure source. We take exactly identical another element, completely evacuated and then sealed. So, these two are to the adjacent arms of the Wheatstone bridge. Now, initially we get the null condition. Now, when the measuring element is connected to the pressure source, this pressure causes change in temperature of this resistance. If the resistance changes, there will be an unbalance in the circuit. So, the bridge unbalanced current will be a measure of pressure. So, initially we balance the bridge, and then the measuring element is connected to the pressure source, and the bridge unbalanced current is taken as a measure of pressure. If we plot for air, we typically get a nonlinear relationship. Finally, let us talk about Knudsen gauge. It is an absolute gauge in the range of 10 to the power minus 8 to 10 to the power minus 3 torr. It is independent of gas composition. However, it is more suitable for laboratories. It depends on momentum transfer principle. This is a schematic of Knudsen gauge. We have two heated plates which are fixed. In between, we have a movable vane. So, we have two heated plates whose temperature is Tf, absolute temperature should be exactly known, and in between we have a movable vane. The gap between the movable vane and the heated and these fixed plates are extremely small. It should be less than, the gap should be, gap between the movable vane and the fixed heat plates should be less than the mean free path of the gas molecules whose pressure we are going to measure. This movable vane is spring restricted, and we have a mirror on the movable vane. Now, this is connected to vacuum. The movable vane temperature should also be known. Let us say the movable vane temperature is Tv, the heated place temperature is Tf, and Tf is of course higher than the movable vane temperature Tv. Now, kinetic theory tells us when the gas molecules rebound from the heated plates, they will have greater momentum compared to the case when they rebound from the cooler movable vane. So, when the gas molecules rebound from the heated plates, they will be back with greater momentum than the case when they rebound from the cooler movable vane. So, this gives a net force on this spring restricted movable vane, and this will cause the movable vane to deflect, and that deflection can be measured if I send a beam of light to this mirror. The reflection from the reflection of a spot of light on this scale, I can measure the deflection of this movable vane, and then from the knowledge of the deflection I can measure the force acting on the movable vane. So, if I know the force, I can make use of this formula to determine the pressure, where K is a constant, F is the force, Tf is the temperature of the fixed plates, Tv is the temperature of the movable vane. So, with this we conclude our discussion on high vacuum measuring instruments. We end this with a sentence on how to select a pressure measuring instrument for given application. It is heavily influenced by the intended application. We know the range of the pressures over which various instruments are, we know the working range of various pressure measuring instruments now. We also have to keep in mind the purpose of our measurement. For example, if only visual inspection is required, then a simple manometer will do. If we need an electrical output for the purpose of control or monitoring, then perhaps an LVDT or a Bourdon tube with a diaphragm gauge or a Bourdon tube with LVDT or some other transducer is more suitable. In our next class, we will start our discussion on temperature measuring instruments.